Welcome to our deep dive
Okay.
into Indus Towers Limited.
Yeah.
They're a major player in India's telecom infrastructure,
Hmm.
and we're going to explore their financials,
Oh,
their role in the 5G rollout,
right.
and any surprising facts about them.
Interesting.
Our sources include Indus Towers' recent financial reports,
Right.
stock performance updates, and insights from their auditors.
So what's really fascinating about this is that Indus Towers owns and operates like a massive network of cell towers across India,
Oh, wow.
over 234,000.
Wow.
They're essentially the backbone behind the calls you make and the data you use on your phone.
So they're like the landlords of the telecom world.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
They build and maintain these towers and then lease space to different mobile operators like
Wow.
Airtel, Vodafone,
Mhm.
Idea.
Gotcha.
And what's really interesting is this concept called co-location, where each tower can host equipment from multiple operators, making the most of the infrastructure.
Okay.
And on average, they have about 1.65 operators per tower.
Wow. So every time I see one of those towers, I should be picturing it packed with equipment from all different companies.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, how is this giant network translating into financial performance?
Well, the recent performance for the quarter ending December 34, 2024 is pretty impressive.
Okay.
Their revenue was 75,474 million rupees,
Mm-hmm.
which is a 4.8% increase year on year. So that's solid growth.
Mm-hmm.
But what's really striking is their EBITDA,
Mm.
which is a measure of profitability,
Right.
jumped by a massive 93.2% to reach 69,971 million rupees.
Wow.
And that translates to an EBITDA margin of 92.7%.
Okay, you've definitely got my attention now.
Yeah.
92.7%. That seems incredibly high. What is driving that kind of profitability?
There are a few factors at play.
Hmm.
One significant event is Vodafone's complete divestment from Indus Towers.
Right.
They sold off all their shares,
Oh, wait.
and as of November 2024,
Mm.
Indus Towers became a subsidiary of Party Airtel Ltd.
Right. I remember that making headlines.
Yeah.
That was a major shift in the telecom landscape, so Vodafone is completely out of the picture now.
It seems so.
Okay.
Vodafone entities have requested to be reclassified as public, signaling a complete exit from their previous role.
Fascinating. It makes you wonder how that new ownership structure might affect things moving forward.
Yeah.
But let's talk about something else that's shaking up the telecom industry, 5G.
Yeah.
India's rollout is happening at lightning speed, and I'm curious how Indus Towers fits into this.
Yeah, they're absolutely crucial.
Okay.
Think of it this way. Operators provide the 5G technology and services, but they need a robust infrastructure to deploy their equipment.
Uh-huh.
That's where Indus Towers comes in. They provide the physical towers and real estate for those 5G base stations.
So they're essentially laying the groundwork for this whole 5G revolution.
Exactly.
Wow.
And the growth potential is massive.
Okay.
Ericsson forecasts that 5G subscriptions in India will reach a staggering 970 million by 2030.
Wow. Okay, that's a lot to digest. But shifting gears a bit, with all these towers being built, I'm curious about the environmental impact. How is Indus Towers addressing sustainability?
You'd be surprised how proactive they are.
Okay.
They're heavily investing in solar power.
Mm-hmm.
They even have a program called RESCO sites,
Okay.
where they partner with companies to install and manage solar panels at their tower locations.
So they're powering those massive towers with the sun.
Yeah.
I have to admit, that's pretty cool. What else are they doing?
They're implementing some really innovative energy-saving measures.
Like what?
For example, they're converting indoor sites to outdoor ones.
Mm-hmm.
It might seem counterintuitive,
Okay.
but indoor sites require a lot of air conditioning.
Oh.
Outdoor sites can utilize natural ventilation, significantly reducing energy consumption.
That's clever. So they're saving money and reducing their carbon footprint at the same time. Are there any other initiatives they're pursuing?
They're getting pretty creative.
Okay.
In Leh, a region with challenging terrain and limited grid connectivity,
Right.
they've installed solar power systems at sites that aren't even connected to the electricity grid.
Wow.
They're also using a combination of lithium and VRLA batteries,
Okay.
which are more efficient and environmentally friendly.
Wow. They're really thinking outside the box when it comes to sustainability.
Yeah.
But besides the environmental benefits, what's the bottom line for them? Why should they care?
It's a win-win situation.
Okay.
Besides reducing their carbon footprint, which aligns with global sustainability goals and enhances their brand image,
Mm-hmm.
these initiatives help them manage their operational expenses in the face of rising power and fuel costs.
Makes sense. It's great to see a company prioritizing both financial success and environmental responsibility.
Yeah.
Now, before we move on, I'm curious about the regulatory environment they operate in.
Hmm.
Does government policy have a significant impact on their business?
Definitely. The regulatory landscape is actually becoming more favorable for telecom infrastructure companies like Indus Towers. The government is taking steps to simplify processes and create a more conducive business environment for the industry.
Can you give some specific examples?
Absolutely.
Okay.
The right-of-way rules 2024,
Okay.
which just came into effect this year, are designed to streamline the process for obtaining permissions to lay cables and set up towers.
Mm.
This was a major bottleneck before,
Gotcha.
so these new rules are a big step forward.
So less red tape, faster rollout.
Exactly.
That makes sense. Any other policies that are making a difference?
There's the composite billing scheme, now implemented in 11 states, which simplifies the billing process for infrastructure providers.
Right.
This reduces their administrative burden
Okay.
and makes revenue collection more efficient.
Gotcha.
And there's the Green Energy Open Access Policy, notified in 24 states, which incentivizes the use of renewable energy, something that directly benefits Indus Towers and their green initiatives.
So it seems like the government is recognizing the importance of a robust telecom infrastructure for India's growth. Exactly. And a company like Indus Towers already investing in sustainable practices and benefiting from this supportive regulatory environment seems to be in a prime position for success.
Speaking of success, we've discussed their impressive financial performance. But how do we know they're financially healthy and stable in the long run?
To get a clear picture, let's look at what their auditors have to say.
Okay.
They've issued an unmodified opinion on Indus Towers' financial statements. In simple terms, this means the auditors believe those statements are a fair and accurate representation of the company's financial position. This signals transparency and sound financial management.
That's reassuring. Any other interesting tidbits from the auditor's report?
There's a detail I found noteworthy.
Okay.
Indus Towers proactively addressed a tax issue related to input tax credit on towers. It shows they're not cutting corners when it comes to financial compliance and are serious about good corporate governance. That definitely adds to their credibility. Now let's shift gears and see how the market is reacting to all these developments.
Okay.
Indus Towers is listed on the National Stock Exchange, so their stock performance can give us valuable insights.
Right. It's fascinating to see how a company like Indus Towers,
Yeah.
which provides the physical infrastructure for our digital lives, is also deeply intertwined with the financial world.
You're right. It's like this hidden world that most people don't even think about.
Yeah.
And speaking of hidden worlds, let's pull back the curtain and examine Indus Towers' recent financial statements to understand the scale of their operation.
Okay.
Okay, I'm ready to dive into those numbers.
As of December 31st, 2024,
Okay.
their total assets were a massive 616,924 million rupees.
Wow, that's a lot of zeros.
Yeah.
Can you break down like what makes up this massive asset base?
A big chunk, as you might imagine,
Yeah.
is their property, plant, and equipment, which includes those thousands of towers we talked about.
Right.
This alone accounts for 477,557 million rupees.
So those towers are literally worth a fortune.
They also have significant financial assets totaling 139,367 million rupees,
Okay.
including things like trade receivables, cash, and investments.
Okay, so we've looked at what they own. Now what about their liabilities? Like what do they owe?
Their total liabilities as of December 34, 2024 were 293,332 million rupees.
Okay, and what are the main things contributing to that number?
A large portion is lease liabilities,
Okay.
reflecting the long-term leases they hold on the land where their towers are located. This alone comes to 178,539 million rupees.
Makes sense. They need to secure those prime locations for all those towers. What else?
They also have borrowings,
Okay.
both long-term and short-term, totaling 45,522 million rupees.
Okay.
Plus, they have trade payables, which is the money they owe to their suppliers,
Right.
amounting to 25,027 million rupees.
So they have a significant amount of debt, but it doesn't seem alarming considering their assets and revenue. Is there a way to assess their debt level more accurately?
Absolutely. We can look at their debt-to-equity ratio.
Okay.
This compares their total debt to their shareholders' equity.
Gotcha.
Essentially, it tells us how much debt they're using to finance their assets compared to the money invested by shareholders.
Okay, so what's their ratio?
As of December 34, 2024, it was based 0.15.
Okay. Is that a good or a bad thing?
Generally, a lower debt-to-equity ratio is considered favorable, as it indicates lower financial risk. Indus Towers' ratio of 0.15 is relatively low,
Okay.
suggesting they're not overly reliant on debt and have a healthy balance between debt and equity.
That's good to hear. Now I'm curious about their cash flow. You know, how much cash they're generating and how they're using it.
Their consolidated statement of cash flows can give us those details.
Great. What are the key takeaways from that statement?
As you might expect, their primary source of cash inflow comes from their core business operations, providing that tower infrastructure.
So how much did their operations generate in the recent quarter?
Their net cash flow from operating activities for the quarter ending December 31st, 2024, was a healthy 57,751 million rupees.
That's a lot of cash. How are they using it?
A significant portion is going towards investing activities, mainly capital expenditure, for expanding their tower network and upgrading infrastructure.
And how much did they spend on that in the last quarter?
Their net cash outflow for investing activities was 12,260 million rupees.
That's a substantial investment, but it makes sense given their ambitions and the 5G rollout happening all over India.
Yeah.
What about the rest of the cash?
They're also using it for financing activities.
Okay.
Things like paying dividends to shareholders, repaying debt, and raising new capital.
Right. So how much went towards those activities in the recent quarter?
Their net cash outflow for financing activities for the quarter ending December 31st, 2024 was 19,046 million rupees.
So it seems like they're generating strong cash flow from their operations, investing in growth and managing their debt and dividend payments effectively.
That's a good summary of their cash flow situation. Now, shifting gears a bit, let's talk about their corporate social responsibility initiatives.
Yes, this is something I'm always interested in learning about. I think CSR is becoming increasingly important for companies, not just ethically, but also for their brand image and long-term value.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Consumers are definitely paying more attention to a company's social and environmental impact.
Right.
CSR is no longer just a nice-to-have, it's a must-have.
So how does Indus Towers approach CSR?
They seem to have a comprehensive and well-structured CSR program.
Okay.
Their initiatives are aligned with the UN Sustainable Development Goals and focus on education, healthcare, and community development.
Can you give us some specific examples of their activities?
They have a flagship program called Indus
Okay.
which aims to improve the quality of education in rural areas by providing infrastructure support,
Right.
teacher training, and digital learning resources to schools.
That's a great initiative. I'm a firm believer that education is the foundation for progress and empowerment.
They also have a program called Indus Swasthya, which focuses on providing healthcare facilities and awareness programs in underprivileged communities.
Access to healthcare is a basic human right.
Yeah.
And it's commendable that they're addressing this crucial need. What other community development projects are they involved in?
They are contributing to a variety of projects,
Okay.
such as providing safe drinking water, sanitation facilities, and skill development training in rural areas.
It sounds like they're taking a holistic approach to CSR, addressing various social needs and not just throwing money at the problem.
Right. They're actively involved in implementing and monitoring these projects,
Okay.
ensuring their effectiveness and impact.
That's great to hear. Now let's talk more about their environmental sustainability efforts. We briefly discussed their investments in renewable energy earlier.
Yes, but they're doing much more than that.
Okay.
They have a dedicated environmental sustainability program to minimize their environmental impact across all operations.
What are some of the key elements of this program?
They've set ambitious targets for reducing their carbon footprint,
Okay.
energy consumption, and waste generation. They're also focusing on water conservation and promoting biodiversity.
That sounds comprehensive. How are they achieving these targets?
We've already talked about their investments in solar power,
Yeah.
which is significantly reducing their reliance on fossil fuels.
Right.
They're also implementing energy efficiency measures across their operations, like using energy-efficient equipment and optimizing their power usage.
Those are great steps, but what about waste management? How are they addressing that?
They have a comprehensive waste management program that focuses on reducing, reusing, and recycling waste generated from their operations. They're also working to minimize hazardous waste
Right.
and promote responsible e-waste management.
It's clear they're taking environmental sustainability seriously and are making a genuine effort to minimize their impact.
And they're not doing it alone. They're actively engaging with their employees, suppliers, and local communities to promote environmental awareness and collaboration.
That's fantastic. It's crucial for creating a culture of sustainability.
Right.
Now, I want to touch upon their regulatory and legal landscape.
Hmm.
The telecom industry is heavily regulated,
Yeah,
so compliance is crucial for their operations.
absolutely. Regulatory compliance is vital in this industry.
Right.
And Indus Towers seems to have a strong compliance track record.
Okay.
They have systems and processes in place to ensure they adhere to all applicable laws and regulations.
I'm curious to know more about your compliance practices. Can you elaborate?
Sure, they have a dedicated legal and compliance team that monitors regulatory changes, provides guidance to the organization, and conducts regular audits to ensure compliance.
Okay.
They also have a whistleblower policy to encourage employees to report any violations.
It sounds like they have all the essential elements of a robust compliance program.
They also actively engage with regulatory bodies and industry associations to advocate for a fair and transparent regulatory environment.
It seems like they're committed to operating ethically and responsibly. Now, I'm curious about their approach to innovation.
Okay.
In a rapidly evolving industry like telecom, staying ahead of the curve is crucial.
You're absolutely right. It's a constant race to innovate and adapt in this industry.
Yeah.
And Indus Towers seems to embrace innovation.
Okay.
They have a dedicated research and development team that's constantly exploring new technologies and solutions to enhance their offerings and create value for their customers.
Can you give us some specific examples of their innovation initiatives?
They're investing in cutting-edge technologies like 5G, artificial intelligence, and the Internet of Things to create smarter and more efficient infrastructure.
Wow.
They're even exploring the use of drones and other advanced technologies for tower maintenance and inspection.
Those are some truly impressive advancements.
Yeah.
I can definitely see the value those bring to their clients.
Exactly. These technologies enable them to provide faster, more reliable, and cost-effective services to their customers. Their investments in 5G, for instance,
Right.
are paving the way for faster data speeds,
Yeah.
lower latency, and enhanced network capacity,
Right.
which are essential for supporting the ever-growing demand for data-intensive applications.
It sounds like they're positioning themselves as a technology leader in the industry,
Yeah.
not content with just being an infrastructure provider.
They're definitely pushing the boundaries, and they're not doing it alone.
Oh,
They're
okay.
actively collaborating with startups and technology providers to foster innovation and bring new solutions to the market faster.
That's a smart move. It gives them access to the agility and creativity of startups
Right.
while providing a platform for those startups to scale. Speaking of scaling, let's talk about their growth strategy.
Oh.
They're already the market leader,
Yeah.
but it seems like they're not resting on their laurels.
You're right. In a dynamic market like telecom, a clear growth strategy is essential. And Indus Towers seems to be focusing on both organic growth and strategic acquisitions.
What are some of their organic growth initiatives?
They're continuing to expand their tower network to meet the growing demand for telecom infrastructure, especially in rural areas where connectivity is still limited.
Right.
They're also expanding their offerings to provide a wider range of services,
Okay.
like small cells, fiber optic networks,
Okay.
and in-building solutions.
So they're branching out beyond just towers,
Right.
catering to the evolving needs of the market.
Yeah.
What about acquisitions? Can you tell us about any recent ones?
Sure. They recently acquired a smaller tower company to expand their presence in a specific region.
Okay.
And they acquired a company specializing in building solutions to strengthen their capabilities in that growing segment.
These acquisitions are clearly strategic,
Yeah.
helping them solidify their position in the market and create new avenues for growth.
Exactly.
I'm also interested in their customer relationships.
Hmm.
In a business like this, strong customer relationships must be essential.
You hit the nail on the head. Their customers are the lifeblood of their business.
Yeah.
And it appears Indus Towers is committed to building and maintaining those long-term customer relationships.
How do they go about achieving that?
They have a dedicated customer service team that prides itself on providing timely and efficient support.
Okay.
They also have a proactive approach to understanding their customers' needs and developing custom solutions to meet those needs.
So it's not a one-size-fits-all approach.
Yeah,
They're going the extra mile to tailor their services to each client.
exactly. They're not just providing a generic service. They personalize it to meet specific requirements. And they have a great track record of meeting service-level agreements, ensuring their clients get the quality they expect.
That's crucial for building trust and loyalty. Do they have any other ways of engaging with their customers?
They're constantly gathering feedback
Okay.
and identifying areas where they can improve. It's clear they're going above and beyond to build strong, lasting relationships with their clients.
That's impressive. Now let's shift our attention to something that's hard to quantify, but incredibly valuable: their brand and reputation.
Right.
You're right. In today's digital age, brand and reputation are invaluable assets for any company.
Yeah,
A good reputation can open doors and create opportunities,
absolutely.
while a bad one can be incredibly damaging.
Yeah.
So how does Indus Towers' brand and reputation stack up?
They have built a solid reputation as a reliable and trustworthy provider of telecom infrastructure.
Okay.
They've consistently delivered high-quality services,
Hmm.
met their commitments, and operated ethically and transparently.
Those are definitely the cornerstones of a strong reputation.
Yeah.
Have they received any recognition for their efforts?
Yes, they have.
Okay.
They've been recognized by industry bodies and publications for their operational excellence, sustainability initiatives, and corporate governance practices.
Those accolades definitely lend credibility to their brand, and their strong focus on corporate social responsibility undoubtedly adds to their positive image. It seems like they're doing all the right things.
Absolutely. They're checking all the boxes.
Okay.
Now let's dive back into their financial performance.
No.
But this time, we'll take a closer look at their key financial ratios to gain a more detailed understanding of their profitability,
Right.
efficiency, and overall financial health.
Okay, let's crunch some numbers.
We'll start with their profitability ratios.
Okay.
A key one is the gross profit margin, which tells us how profitable their core business operations are.
So what's their gross profit margin like?
It's been consistently high,
Okay.
which means they're effectively managing their costs of goods sold. It's a very positive indicator.
That's great news. What about their operating profit margin?
Their operating profit margin, which takes into account both their cost of goods sold and operating expenses,
Right.
has also been consistently high, signifying they have good control over their operating expenses.
So they are profitable on both a gross and operating level. That's a good sign. What other financial ratios can give us insights?
Let's look at their efficiency ratios.
Okay.
A key one is the asset turnover ratio,
Okay.
which measures how effectively they're utilizing their assets to generate revenue.
So how are they doing in that area?
Their asset turnover ratio has been steadily improving,
Okay.
which means they're becoming more efficient at utilizing their assets to bring in revenue. This is a positive trend that points to effective management.
That's encouraging to hear. Are there any other efficiency ratios we should look at?
Well, there's the inventory turnover ratio,
Right.
which measures how quickly they're selling their inventory.
Okay.
But this ratio isn't really applicable to Indus Towers since they don't sell physical goods.
Right.
Their inventory is essentially their tower infrastructure, which is a long-term asset.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah.
What other types of financial ratios can we analyze?
Next, we can delve into their liquidity ratios.
Okay.
These ratios tell us about their ability to meet their short-term financial obligations, which is crucial for any business to ensure smooth operations.
Okay, so how does Indus Towers fare when it comes to liquidity?
One of the key ratios we look at is the current ratio.
Okay.
This compares their current assets to their current liabilities,
Right.
giving us an idea of their ability to pay their short-term debts.
And what's their current ratio?
It's comfortably above the industry average,
Okay.
which means they are in a strong position to meet those short-term financial obligations.
That's reassuring. Are there any other liquidity ratios that can give us additional insights?
Yes, there's the quick ratio,
Okay.
which is similar to the current ratio, but it excludes inventory from current assets,
Okay.
offering a more conservative measure of their liquidity.
So what's their quick ratio?
It's also looking healthy,
Okay.
further reinforcing their strong liquidity position.
That's great. It seems like they have more than enough liquid assets to cover their short-term obligations. What other areas of their financial health should we examine?
Let's move on to their solvency ratios,
Okay.
which can tell us about their long-term financial stability and their ability to meet their long-term obligations.
Yes, solvency is crucial for the long-term sustainability of any business. So tell me, how solvent is Indus Towers?
One key solvency ratio, which we touched on earlier, is the debt-to-equity ratio.
Right.
As you might recall, theirs is relatively low, indicating they're not overly dependent on debt financing.
Right. What other solvency ratios should we consider?
Another one is the debt-to-asset ratio,
Okay.
which compares their total debt to their total assets, providing a broader perspective on their leverage.
Okay. And what's their debt-to-asset ratio?
It's also low,
Okay.
further reinforcing their solid solvency position.
So it seems like they are in good financial shape, both in the short term and the long term. That's good to hear. What else can we look at to assess their financial standing?
Let's wrap up our financial analysis by looking at their valuation ratios. These
Okay.
ratios help us understand how the market perceives the company's value.
Yes, valuation is always a key consideration for investors. What are some of the commonly used valuation ratios?
One of the most common is the price-to-earnings ratio,
Right.
or PE ratio,
Mm-hmm.
which compares the company's stock price to its earnings per share.
Right. So a higher PE ratio means investors are willing to pay more for each dollar of earnings, often because they anticipate strong future growth. What's Indus Towers' PE ratio?
Their PE ratio is currently in line with the industry average,
Okay.
suggesting the market is valuing them fairly based on their current earnings.
So they're not overvalued or undervalued at this point in time?
Right.
What other valuation ratios should we consider?
Another one is the price-to-book ratio,
Okay.
or PB ratio.
Mm-hmm.
This compares their stock price to their book value per share.
Right. So if the PB ratio is above 1, it means the market values the company's assets higher than their book value, often because of perceived potential for growth or value creation.
Exactly.
So what's Indus Towers' PB ratio?
Their PB ratio is also in line with the industry average, further supporting the idea that they are fairly valued by the market.
So all these financial ratios are pointing in a positive direction for Indus Towers.
Yeah,
They're profitable, efficient, financially healthy, and fairly valued by the market.
you summarized it perfectly.
Okay.
They seem to be hitting all the right marks.
But past performance doesn't guarantee future success, right?
Of course.
So let's shift gears and discuss their future outlook and growth prospects. What does the future hold for Indus Towers?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
The past is informative, but the future is what really matters to investors.
Right.
And from what we've seen so far, the future looks bright for Indus Towers.
Okay.
The Indian telecom industry is expected to keep growing at a robust pace, fueled by increasing smartphone usage,
Right.
rising data consumption, and the government's ongoing push for digitalization.
That's a very favorable macroeconomic environment. And as the largest independent tower company in India, they are perfectly positioned to capitalize on this growth.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
And what makes their position even stronger is the ongoing rollout of 5G technology,
Mm-hmm.
which is a major growth driver for them.
Right.
As we discussed before, 5G requires a much denser network of towers and other infrastructure,
Right.
creating a massive opportunity for companies like Indus Towers.
Right. They're essentially laying the foundation for the 5G revolution in India,
Exactly.
which will significantly boost their business. What other factors are driving their growth?
They're not just relying on the 5G boom.
Okay.
They're also expanding their offerings beyond traditional towers
Mm-hmm.
to provide a wider range of services like small cells, fiber optic networks, and in-building solutions.
So they're diversifying their revenue streams and catering to the evolving needs of the market,
Right.
which is a smart strategy.
Right. Exactly. They're also actively pursuing strategic acquisitions to expand their footprint and acquire new capabilities, as we've seen with their recent purchases.
They really seem to be firing on all cylinders, but let's be realistic. They
Yeah.
must face some challenges as well.
Of course, no company operates in a vacuum.
You're right.
One challenge they need to address is regulatory uncertainty.
Okay.
As you mentioned earlier, the telecom industry in India is heavily regulated,
Right.
and changes in government policies can significantly impact their operations.
That's a valid concern. What else should it?
We should be mindful of.
Yeah.
Another factor is the rapid pace of technological change. We're witnessing the transition from 4G to 5G, and who knows what the future holds.
Right.
Indus Towers needs to stay agile
Yeah.
and adapt to these changes to ensure their infrastructure remains relevant.
So they can't just sit back and relax.
No.
They need to keep innovating and anticipating future trends. We talked about their R&D earlier, so it seems like they're on top of that. Are there any other potential hurdles they need to be aware of?
Well, the financial health of their customers,
Right.
the mobile operators,
Mm-hmm.
is a factor.
Okay.
If any of these operators face financial difficulties,
Right.
it could affect their ability to pay Indus Towers,
Yeah.
impacting their revenue stream.
That's an interesting point I hadn't considered.
Yeah.
Their success is intertwined with the success of their clients.
Exactly. They need to carefully assess the financial stability of their customer base
Right.
and maybe even diversify their portfolio to mitigate this risk.
It seems like you've highlighted some important things for us to think about.
Yeah.
So while Indus Towers is currently in a strong position,
Mm-hmm.
they need to be aware of these potential challenges and address them proactively to maintain their growth.
I agree. Now let's shift our focus back to a topic we discussed earlier,
Go.
their sustainability initiatives.
Yes.
We touched on their efforts in renewable energy, but I think it's worth exploring this further.
Absolutely. I'm really impressed with their commitment to sustainability. It seems like they've gone above and beyond simply ticking boxes.
Yeah.
It's genuinely integrated into their business strategy.
Yeah, and what's particularly fascinating is how they connect their sustainability efforts to their financial performance.
Okay.
They highlight how these green initiatives are helping them control costs, protect them from fluctuating energy prices,
Right.
and make them more appealing to investors who prioritize environmental responsibility.
It's like they're saying being green isn't just good for the planet, it's good for business.
Precisely. And they're not just making empty claims.
Right.
They've quantified the benefits of their energy efficiency measures
Yeah.
and the cost savings from their renewable energy investments. It's a smart, forward-thinking approach.
It's a great example of how sustainability can be a core element of a successful business strategy,
Yeah.
benefiting both the company and the environment.
Now, before we wrap up, I want to touch upon something that's been on my mind throughout this deep dive.
Okay.
We've talked about their impressive growth,
Yeah.
their market dominance,
Mm-hmm.
and their seemingly secure position in India's telecom landscape.
Right.
But we all know the business world is constantly evolving.
Mm-hmm.
And today's success story can quickly become tomorrow's cautionary tale.
You're right. No company can afford to become complacent.
Right.
What are you thinking about specifically?
I'm wondering about the future of the telecom infrastructure industry itself.
Okay.
What could potentially disrupt the current model?
I see what you mean. We're seeing technologies like satellite internet and decentralized wireless networks gaining traction.
Yeah.
Could these advancements challenge the traditional tower-based infrastructure that Indus Towers relies on?
It's a valid question.
Yeah.
If satellite internet, for example, becomes more affordable and accessible,
Right.
especially in remote areas,
Mm-hmm.
it could reduce the need for physical towers in those locations.
And with decentralized wireless networks,
Right.
where devices connect directly to each other instead of through central towers,
Exactly.
the whole concept of tower-based infrastructure could be disrupted.
There's an interesting scenario to consider.
Yeah.
Indus Towers, with its current focus on large-scale towers,
Right.
might need to adapt its strategy to remain competitive in a world where connectivity becomes more distributed
Right.
and less reliant on centralized infrastructure.
It's a good reminder that even giants like Indus Towers need to be constantly scanning the horizon,
Yeah.
looking for potential disruptions, and being prepared to pivot their business models if necessary.
Now let's shift our focus to their consolidated statement of operations.
Okay.
This statement breaks down their revenue, expenses, and profit, giving us a clearer picture of their financial activities.
Okay, let's see what these numbers tell us.
One of the first things that jumps out is the significant increase in revenue and EBITDA for the quarter ending December 31st, 2024,
Right.
compared to the same period last year. We've touched on this briefly before, but it's worth highlighting again.
Those numbers were definitely impressive. Can you remind our listeners of the actual figures?
Their revenue for the quarter was 75,474 million rupees,
Mm-hmm.
a solid 4.8% increase year on year.
Right.
But the real eye-catcher was their EBITDA,
Okay.
which reached 69,971 million rupees,
Wow.
a staggering 93.2% jump from the previous year.
Wow, those are some serious gains. Now let's break down their expenses.
Okay.
One key expense for a company like Indus Towers,
Yeah.
with all those towers to power,
Right.
has to be their energy costs.
You'd think so, right?
Yeah.
Especially with global energy prices on the rise.
Mm-hmm.
But surprisingly, their energy costs have remained relatively stable over the past few quarters.
That's interesting. How have they managed to keep those costs under control?
Their proactive investments in renewable energy are a major factor. By reducing their reliance on traditional energy sources,
Mm-hmm.
they've shielded themselves from the volatility of fossil fuel prices.
It sounds like their commitment to sustainability is paying off in more ways than one.
Yeah,
Now, what about other operating expenses?
right.
Things like rent, maintenance, and administrative costs.
Interestingly, their other operating expenses actually decreased significantly for the quarter ending December 31st, 2024,
Okay.
compared to both the previous quarter and the same quarter last year.
That's a positive sign. What factors might be contributing to this decrease?
It could be due to a number of things, including operational efficiencies,
Mm-hmm.
cost optimization measures,
Okay.
or even the change in ownership structure.
Right.
A deeper dive into their financial statements would be needed to pinpoint the exact reasons.
It sounds like they're doing a good job of managing their operating costs,
Yeah.
which is always a plus. Now let's talk about their finance costs.
Right.
These include things like interest expenses on their borrowings.
Mm-hmm.
With interest rates rising globally, I imagine this must be a concern for them.
You're right. And as you might expect, their finance costs have increased substantially for the quarter ending December 31st, 2024,
Okay.
compared to the same quarter last year.
That's not surprising given the current global interest rate environment. Do we have any insight into what's causing such a sharp increase?
It could be a combination of factors, including new debt they've taken on, higher interest rates on existing debt,
Right.
or changes in the terms of their debt agreements.
It seems like this is an area they need to monitor closely to ensure it doesn't negatively impact their profitability.
Yeah.
Speaking of profitability, let's look at their profit after tax, the ultimate measure of their financial success.
Their profit after tax for the quarter ending December 31st, 2024, was an impressive 40,032 million rupees.
Wow, that's a huge jump from the 15,405 million rupee profit they reported for the same quarter last year. What's driving this impressive increase?
It's a result of several factors working together:
Yeah.
higher revenue,
Mm-hmm.
the dramatic increase in their EBITDA margin, and effective management of operating expenses, despite the rise in finance costs.
Wait.
It all points to sound financial management and strategic decision-making.
It's clear that they're doing a lot of things right.
Yeah.
Now, before we move on, I'd like to touch upon their tax expense.
Okay.
Taxes are always an important consideration for any company. What can you tell us about their tax situation?
Their total tax expense for the quarter ending December 31st, 2024, was 12,156 million rupees.
Okay, how does that compare to their tax expenses in previous quarters? Are they seeing an upward trend?
Actually, no.
Okay.
Their tax expense has remained relatively stable over the past few quarters. It seems like they're effectively managing their tax liabilities and staying on top of compliance with all applicable tax regulations.
That's always a good sign. Now I think it's time we shifted our focus to the people behind the numbers, their management and governance structure.
Right.
Understanding the individuals leading Indus Towers is essential for assessing the company's long-term prospects.
Absolutely, a company's leadership can make or break its success.
So who are the key figures at the helm of Indus Towers?
Their board of directors is composed of highly experienced professionals from diverse backgrounds,
Okay.
bringing a wealth of knowledge and expertise to the table.
That sounds promising. What about their CEO?
Yeah.
Who's the captain steering the ship?
Their CEO is a seasoned executive with a proven track record in the telecom industry.
Okay.
He's played a key role in driving the company's growth and navigating the complex challenges of this rapidly evolving market.
It sounds like he's the right person for the job. And what about their CFO, who's managing the finances?
They have a highly respected finance professional as their CFO,
Okay.
someone with extensive experience in financial management, strategic planning, and investor relations.
It seems like they have a solid leadership team in place, which is essential for any company. What about their corporate governance framework? How do they ensure ethical conduct and accountability?
They have a well-defined corporate governance framework
Okay.
that emphasizes ethical behavior, transparency, and accountability.
Okay.
They've implemented robust systems of internal controls and risk management processes to ensure compliance with all applicable laws and regulations.
That's reassuring to hear. Any other noteworthy governance practices they've implemented?
They also have a whistleblower policy in place to encourage employees to report any unethical or illegal activities without fear of reprisal.
Okay.
It shows they're committed to fostering a culture of transparency and accountability.
It seems like they're taking corporate governance very seriously, which is crucial for building trust with investors and stakeholders. Now let's move on to their human resource management practices.
Okay.
After all, a company's employees are its most valuable asset.
Right.
How does Indus Towers value and manage its workforce?
They prioritize employee well-being, training and development.
Can you tell us more about their specific human resource initiatives? I'm always curious to see how companies are investing in their employees.
Sure, they offer competitive compensation and benefits packages to attract and retain top talent.
Okay.
They also have several programs designed to promote employee engagement, diversity, and inclusion.
It sounds like they're creating a positive and supportive work environment, what other initiatives are they implementing?
They also have a dedicated program for employee training and development,
Okay.
ensuring their workforce has the skills and knowledge they need to adapt to the ever-changing demands of the telecom industry.
Investing in their employees is a wise move.
Yeah.
It's a win-win situation.
Mm-hmm.
Now let's shift our focus to something that always interests investors,
Okay.
their dividend policy.
Dividends are definitely a welcome perk for investors.
Yeah,
And Indus Towers has a consistent track record of paying dividends to its shareholders.
that's good news. What's their dividend payout ratio like?
Their dividend payout ratio, which is the percentage of profits paid out as dividends,
Right.
has been within a healthy range,
Yeah.
indicating a sustainable dividend policy.
That's encouraging. What other information can you share about their dividend policy?
They've also been steadily increasing their dividend payout over the past few years,
Okay.
which signals confidence in their future earnings potential.
That's definitely a positive sign for investors, now having covered their financial performance.
Right.
Management, governance, human resource practices, and dividend policy.
Hmm.
Let's take a step back and examine their industry and competitive landscape.
All right.
I'm curious to see where Indus Towers fits within the broader telecom industry in India.
India's telecom industry is one of the fastest growing in the world,
Wow.
driven by factors like increasing mobile phone penetration, rising data consumption,
Right.
and the government's initiatives to promote digitalization.
It's a dynamic and competitive market. Where does Indus Towers stand amidst all this?
They are the largest independent tower company in India, holding a dominant market share.
That's impressive, but they must face some competition, right? Who
Yeah.
are their main competitors in this space?
They face competition from other tower companies,
Okay.
as well as from some mobile operators who have chosen to build and operate their own tower infrastructure.
It sounds like a competitive market. How do they differentiate themselves from their rivals? What are their key strengths?
Their vast network, strong customer relationships,
Yep.
operational efficiency, and proactive approach to sustainability are their major advantages.
Those are all valuable assets in a competitive market. Are they exploring any new growth opportunities to further solidify their position?
They're leveraging their scale and expertise to explore new avenues,
Okay.
such as providing infrastructure for small cells and fiber optic networks.
Right.
They are not content with just being a tower company. They're looking to become a comprehensive one-stop shop for telecom infrastructure.
That's a smart move.
Yeah,
It allows them to tap into new markets and diversify their revenue streams.
exactly.
But what about the risks and challenges they face in this dynamic market?
One of the biggest risks is regulatory uncertainty.
Right.
As we've discussed, the telecom industry is heavily regulated, and changes in government policies can have a major impact on their operations.
Right. That's always a concern for businesses operating in regulated industries. Can you give some examples of potential regulatory challenges they might face?
Changes in spectrum allocation policies, licensing requirements,
Okay.
or even pricing regulations could significantly affect their profitability.
So staying informed about policy changes and maintaining good relationships with regulatory bodies is crucial for them.
Yeah.
What other challenges should they be prepared for?
Intense competition is another constant challenge.
Right. We talked about their competitors earlier. How are they tackling this competitive pressure?
They're focusing on nurturing those strong customer relationships we discussed earlier,
Right.
optimizing their operations to reduce costs, and constantly exploring new growth opportunities to stay ahead of the curve.
It sounds like they're not backing down from the challenge.
Yeah.
But what about the rapid pace of technological advancements? How are they keeping up with the constant innovation in the telecom industry?
They're investing heavily in research and development
Okay.
to stay abreast of emerging technologies like 5G, small cells, and fiber optic networks. And they're partnering with technology providers to enhance their offerings and deliver cutting-edge solutions to their customers.
It seems like they're taking a proactive approach to address the risks and challenges they face, which is a great sign.
Yeah.
Now, before we wrap up our deep dive, I'd like to touch upon a specific aspect that I find crucial,
Okay.
their approach to risk management.
That's a very important area to consider.
Yeah.
Every company faces risks, and it's how they identify, assess, and mitigate those risks that ultimately determines their long-term success.
So how does Indus Towers approach risk management?
Okay.
Do they have a structured process?
They do. They have a robust risk management framework integrated into their overall business strategy.
Can you elaborate on their framework?
Sure.
I'm curious to know how they go about identifying and managing risks.
They have a dedicated risk management team responsible for identifying,
Okay.
assessing and monitoring various risks across the organization. They use a combination of qualitative and quantitative methods to evaluate the likelihood and potential impact of these risks.
So they're not just guessing, they're using data and analysis to make informed decisions.
Exactly.
What types of risks have they identified?
They've identified a wide range of risks,
Okay.
including regulatory risks, competitive risks,
Right.
operational risks,
Okay.
financial risks, and technological risks.
That sounds like a pretty comprehensive list. How do they go about mitigating these risks? What strategies do they have in place?
They have specific mitigation plans for each identified risk,
Okay.
using a combination of preventive measures, control mechanisms, and contingency plans.
So they're not just identifying the risks, they're actively preparing for them.
Exactly.
Can you give us some specific examples of their risk mitigation strategies?
For example, to mitigate regulatory risk, they actively engage with government bodies and industry associations to stay informed about potential policy changes and advocate for a favorable regulatory environment.
Okay.
To mitigate competitive risk,
Right.
they focus on maintaining strong customer relationships, optimizing their cost structure, and constantly seeking out new growth opportunities.
It seems like they're taking a very proactive and systematic approach to risk management,
Yeah,
which is a key ingredient for long-term success.
absolutely. And to ensure their risk management framework remains effective, they have a robust process for monitoring and reviewing it.
Okay.
They're constantly adapting to the changing business environment.
That's crucial for any company, especially in a rapidly evolving industry like telecom. Now, I think we've covered a lot of ground today.
Yeah,
We've delved into their business model, their financial performance, their management and governance structures,
Right.
their sustainability initiatives, their competitive landscape, and even their approach to risk management.
It's been a very comprehensive deep dive into Indus Towers.
It has been a fascinating journey,
Yeah.
and I feel like I have a much deeper understanding of this company, its role in the Indian telecom industry,
Yeah.
and its potential for future growth.
Now, for a change of pace,
Sure.
let's look at Indus Towers from an investor's perspective.
Great idea. So imagine we're investors looking at Indus Towers. What would catch our attention?
One of the first things that would jump out is their impressive financial performance.
Okay.
We've already discussed their strong revenue growth,
All right.
their incredibly high EBITDA margin, and their solid ROCE.
Right. Those numbers are definitely attention grabbing. What else might pique our interest as investors?
Their strong cash flow is another positive indicator.
Okay.
They're generating a healthy amount of cash from their operations, which allows them to invest in future growth,
Right.
pay dividends to shareholders, and manage their debt effectively.
Those are all good signs for potential investors. What about their valuation? We talked about some valuation ratios earlier.
Right.
How does Indus Towers stack up compared to other companies in the industry?
Their valuation ratios,
Okay.
such as the price-to-earnings ratio and the price-to-book ratio, are currently in line with the industry average.
Okay.
This suggests that the market is valuing them fairly based on their current performance and future prospects.
So they're not overvalued or undervalued at this point.
That seems to be the case.
Okay.
Of course, valuation is a complex concept, and there are many factors to consider. But based on the available data,
Right.
it appears that Indus Towers is currently priced appropriately.
Now let's shift our focus to their management team and corporate governance practices.
Okay.
As investors, we want to be confident that the company is being led by competent and ethical individuals.
Absolutely. A strong management team with a solid track record and a commitment to ethical practices is essential for long-term success.
Right.
And as we've discussed before, Indus Towers seems to have that in place.
Right. We talked about their experienced board of directors, their CEO with a proven track record in the telecom industry, and their CFO with extensive experience in financial management.
Exactly. And their corporate governance framework,
Right.
which emphasizes ethical conduct, transparency, and accountability, is another positive point for investors.
It's great to see that they are committed to doing business the right way.
Yeah.
Now, what about their growth prospects?
Okay.
As investors, we want to see a company with a clear vision for future growth
Right.
and a strategy for achieving it.
Indus Towers definitely ticks that box.
Yeah.
They have a strong track record of growth, and their future prospects look very promising.
What are some of the key factors driving their future growth?
The ongoing rollout of 5G technology in India is a major growth driver for them. As we discussed earlier, 5G requires a denser network of towers and other infrastructure, which creates a huge opportunity for Indus Towers.
Right. They're essentially building the backbone for India's 5G network.
Exactly. And they're not just relying on the 5G boom.
Right.
They're also diversifying their offerings beyond traditional towers to provide a wider range of services, such as small cells, fiber optic networks, and in-building solutions.
That's a smart move.
Yep.
It allows them to tap into new markets and reduce their reliance on any single revenue stream.
Absolutely. And they're also actively pursuing strategic acquisitions to expand their footprint and acquire new capabilities,
Okay.
as we've seen with their recent purchases.
It sounds like they have a well-defined growth strategy in place, but no investment is without risks.
Of course.
What are some of the key risks that investors should be aware of?
You're right. There are always risks to consider.
Yeah.
One of the main risks for Indus Towers is regulatory uncertainty.
Yeah.
The Indian telecom industry is heavily regulated, and changes in government policies could impact their operations and profitability.
So keeping an eye on the regulatory landscape is crucial for investors.
Absolutely.
What other risks should they be mindful of?
Competition is another key risk. While they are the market leader,
Right.
they face competition from other tower companies and even some mobile operators who are building their own tower infrastructure.
Competition is always a factor in any industry. How is Indus Towers addressing this challenge?
They're focusing on maintaining strong customer relationships, optimizing their operations to reduce costs, and constantly seeking out new growth opportunities.
It sounds like they're taking the right steps to stay ahead of the competition.
Right.
But with technology evolving at such a rapid pace, is there a risk that their infrastructure could become obsolete?
That's a valid concern.
Yeah.
Technological advancements could potentially disrupt the traditional tower-based infrastructure model.
Right.
For example, if satellite internet becomes more affordable and accessible, especially in remote areas, it could reduce the need for physical towers in those locations.
And with the rise of decentralized wireless networks, where devices connect directly to each other instead of relying on central towers,
Exactly.
the whole concept of tower-based infrastructure could be challenged.
Indus Towers needs to be aware of these emerging technologies and adapt its strategy accordingly.
So while their current business model is successful, they can't afford to become complacent.
Right.
They need to stay ahead of the curve and embrace innovation.
Absolutely. Now let's shift gears again and explore another aspect that is becoming increasingly important to investors:
Okay.
a company's commitment to sustainability.
Yes. More and more investors are factoring sustainability into their investment decisions.
Right.
How does Indus Towers measure up in this area?
Indus Towers seems to have fully embraced the concept of sustainability.
Okay.
It's not just a PR exercise for them, it's deeply ingrained in their business strategy.
I'm impressed with their efforts to reduce their environmental impact. They're investing heavily in renewable energy, implementing energy-saving measures,
Right.
and even going as far as installing solar power systems in remote areas like Leh that aren't even connected to the electricity grid.
They're certainly going above and beyond.
And it's not just about reducing their carbon footprint.
Right.
They're also actively promoting social responsibility through various initiatives, such as their scholarship program for underprivileged students and their healthcare initiatives in rural communities.
It's great to see a company that's not just focused on profits,
Yeah.
but also on making a positive impact on the world.
And their commitment to sustainability is not just good for the planet.
Right.
It's also good for their business.
Yeah.
They're highlighting how their green initiatives are helping them control costs, protect them from fluctuating energy prices, and make them more attractive to environmentally conscious investors.
It's a win-win situation. So they're demonstrating that sustainability can be a key driver of both financial success and positive social impact.
It's definitely a great example for other companies to follow. Now, as we wrap up our deep dive into Indus Towers, I feel like we've gained a comprehensive understanding of this telecom giant.
We have.
We've explored their business model, their impressive financial performance, their management and governance structures, their commitment to sustainability, their competitive landscape, and even their potential for future growth.
It's been a fascinating journey.
We have, and I think the key takeaway for me is that Indus Towers is a company that's not just riding the wave of India's telecom boom, but actively shaping its future. They're making smart strategic decisions, investing in innovation, and prioritizing sustainability.
I agree. They seem well-positioned to navigate the challenges and capitalize on the opportunities that lie ahead.
Well, that concludes our deep dive into Indus Towers Ltd.
Okay.
I hope this has given you, our listener, valuable insights into this fascinating company and the dynamic world of Indian telecom.
It's been a pleasure exploring this with you.
Yeah. Likewise, until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.
The ongoing rollout of 5G is definitely a game changer. It's creating so many opportunities for companies like Indus Towers.
Absolutely. And as we discussed, they're not just sitting back and waiting for that 5G wave to carry them.
Right.
They're actively diversifying their offerings beyond traditional towers,
Right.
moving into areas like small cells and fiber optic networks.
Yes.
And in-building solutions.
Exactly. So they're creating a more comprehensive and resilient business model.
Exactly. And let's not forget their strategic acquisitions.
Right.
They've been making some smart moves to expand their footprint and enhance their capabilities.
Yeah, it seems like they're firing on all cylinders, but as with any investment,
Right.
there are always risks to consider.
One of the primary risks for Indus Towers is regulatory uncertainty.
Right.
The Indian telecom industry is heavily regulated, and any sudden changes in government policies could impact their operations and profitability.
Yes. So it's essential for potential investors to keep a close eye on the regulatory landscape and any potential shifts in policy.
Right. What other challenges do they face?
Competition is another key factor to consider.
Mm-hmm.
While they are the market leader, they're not immune to competitive pressures from other power companies and even some mobile operators who are building their own power infrastructure.
So maintaining their competitive edge is crucial. How are they addressing this challenge?
They're focusing on maintaining strong relationships with their customers,
Okay.
optimizing their operations to reduce costs, and constantly exploring new growth opportunities.
It sounds like they're not just sitting back and hoping for the best.
No,
They're actively taking steps to strengthen their position.
exactly. And they're also keeping a close eye on technological advancements to ensure their infrastructure remains relevant.
Right. We talked earlier about the potential disruption from technologies like satellite internet and decentralized wireless networks.
Yes, they need to be prepared to adapt their business model if these technologies gain significant traction.
It's a reminder that no matter how successful a company is today, they can't afford to become complacent.
Right.
The business world is constantly changing, and adaptability is key to long-term survival.
Couldn't agree more. Now, before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to circle back to something we touched on earlier.
Okay.
Their commitment to sustainability,
Mm-hmm.
it really stands out to me.
Me too. Their efforts in areas like renewable energy, energy efficiency, and waste management are impressive.
It's clear that sustainability is not just a buzzword for them.
Right.
They've woven it into the fabric of their business strategy.
And what I find particularly interesting is how they've linked their sustainability initiatives to their financial performance.
Yeah.
They're demonstrating that being environmentally responsible can go hand in hand with profitability.
Exactly. It's a smart and forward-thinking approach.
Right.
By investing in renewable energy, for instance, they're not only reducing their carbon footprint, but also shielding themselves from the volatility of fossil fuel prices.
And their energy efficiency measures are not only good for the environment,
Right.
but also help them control their operating costs.
It's a win-win situation.
Right.
They're showing that sustainability can be a key driver of both financial success and positive social impact.
It's definitely a great example for other companies to follow now.
Yeah.
As we wrap up this deep dive into Indus Towers, I feel like we've gained a comprehensive understanding of this telecom giant.
We have.
We've explored their business model, their impressive financial performance, their management and governance structures, their commitment to sustainability, their competitive landscape, and even their potential for future growth.
It's been a fascinating journey.
We have, and I think the key takeaway for me is that Indus Towers is a company that's not just riding the wave of India's telecom boom,
Yeah.
but actively shaping its future. They're making smart, strategic decisions,
Right.
investing in innovation and prioritizing sustainability.
I agree.
Yeah.
They seem well positioned to navigate the challenges and capitalize on the opportunities that lie ahead.
Well, that concludes our deep dive into Indus Towers Ltd. I hope this has given you, our listener, valuable insights into this fascinating company and the dynamic world of Indian telecom.
It's been a pleasure exploring this with you.
Likewise, until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.